Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree Buonomo. Hi if you're new here, or hey if you've been here before. And today I am going to be talking about my most anticipated books of 2022. So this is a quick list of all the books that I am interested in and will pre-order for the year 2022. But to be honest, most of this list is sequels. And there's a few that I know mostly because either I really love and follow the author or I talk to them on AuthorTube. So this list is pretty brief and I'm excited to just dive in and talk about the few books I'm very excited for. So without further ado, let's just jump into all the books that I want to read in the year 2022. The first one is going to be Where the Drowned Girls Go by Seanan McGuire. This is going to be the 7th book in the Wayward Children series, which follows a bunch of different kids in this fantasy world where all of them have experienced going through doors to other dimensions, much like Narnia or opening a door to Middle Earth. These doors appear and children go through, and when they come back, they end up kind of changed and altered and have a hard time fitting into the society that we live in our world. So there is a school called Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children, where a lot of them go to try to recover themselves, if not find a door to go back to the world they feel like they belong in. So this is going to be the 7th book, and I believe it's going to be a mermaid world, if I'm not mistaken. This book, I do believe, follows one of the characters that was introduced in an earlier book, so I really don't want to spoil too much. There's very few books in this series that you can read as a standalone. I think out of the 6 that are out, only like 2 of them can be safely read. Yeah, it's very interesting. Like, not all of them have to go along with other books, and not all of them have similar characters. It's just kind of interesting to see where the books go, but this is going to be going back to a character that we have already met, and I am very interested in it. I also love that Seanan McGuire has a lot of good representation, in my opinion. Now, obviously, I can't speak for every person that follows something in this series, but there's a lot of good race rep and LGBT plus rep. So ultimately, I am really looking forward to this book. They always come out in January. This one comes out on January 4th, and I've already pre-ordered it, so I'm looking forward to reading it. They're usually very quick reads, so it's always a good way to start my year. The next one that I'm going to be talking about is Extasia by Claire Legrand. So this one is one of those books that came up on my radar, but I don't know too much about. The reason it's going to be on my list is because I'm obsessed with Claire Legrand. She has written one of my favorite fantasy trilogies of all time, which is the Fairyborn or the Imperium trilogy. And I love her writing, I love her style, and I just think that she is going to be my auto-buy author from now on. So Extasia is a witchy young adult horror book, and it's following a main character who is trying to find the root of this evil that's haunting her coven and the village that she lives in. So her and her like witchy sisters, her coven, are trying to find where this evil is taking place so that it can be extinguished. And it just sounds like a good like horror slash interesting take on a classic trope, because we've all seen, like, you know, evil comes to a town and you need someone to wipe it out. But I kind of like that it seems like maybe the sisters aren't as revered, or maybe they're like, people are scared of them as well. So maybe it's like an evil versus evil. I'm not really sure, but like I said, I love Claire Legrand. I love her writing. I love the things that she creates. I think she's a very underrated author, and I'm excited to see where this book goes. Extasia comes out on February 22nd. And then on March 1st, we have Gallant by V.E. Schwab. V.E. Schwab is definitely one of my favorite authors. I know she's not a hit for everyone who reads her books, but I really love the books that I've read from her so far. And I really like her kind of slow and steady pacing of writing. I think that's where some people can lose interest in her books, because she has a very slow pace on a lot of things. But I also feel like I kind of write similarly to her, where like things might not be punching you in the face every second, but you're going to get somewhere at the end and it's going to hit you emotionally. At least that's how I hope I write. And I really just appreciate how she writes her books. So Gallant is another fantasy novel by the author. It is being touted as Secret Garden meets Crimson Peaks, and it is a standalone novel, which for me is one of my favorite things because I have a lot of series. As I mentioned in my 2022 reading goals, I have a lot of series that I tend to forget to finish or just don't ever get around to finishing. So when a standalone comes out, I am immediately gravitating towards it. So this book is following a main character named Olivia, who is at a sort of boarding school for most of her life when she gets a letter to come back to the place that her mother was from called Gallant. So I think Gallant is supposed to be kind of like the estate maybe, or the town, I'm not quite sure. But she gets requested to come back, and when she shows up, there's a lot of secrets and things that are to be revealed to her. So not everything is as it seems, and the manor is crumbling, and she kind of has to figure out what her place is in all of this. So I'm very excited. I really love the trope of like people coming back to a place that they were once living in, or they were called to like figure out their family drama. Some of my favorite books, like my 5-star reads, are all to do with this trope. So I think I'm going to like this one as well. And I'm just very excited. Like I said, I do think that V.E. Schwab's writing continues to mature and grow as she continues writing. And I recently loved The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. It was one of my favorite books of 2020. So I think that I will also love Gallant. Then on April 19th, I'm going to have a small departure from the fantasy books, and I'm going to end up wanting to read a sci-fi because Janelle Monae, who is an accomplished singer, actor, writer, I mean, she just does everything. She is coming out with an anthology in collaboration with other sci-fi and fantasy authors, and it is called The Memory Library and Other Stories of Dirty Computer. So this is a compilation of short stories that have to examine different themes of queerness, race, gender, plurality, love, and the liberation of those ideas in futuristic, Afrofuturistic worlds. So I'm very excited to see what she is going to do with this anthology. I really like Janelle Monae as a person, and I really think that the authors that she has going into this whole collaboration is also going to be great. So I'm very excited to see what comes of it, and I cannot wait. I know the Goodreads was very like sparse on this, so I had to kind of look up on HarperCollins, but it is coming out through HarperCollins on April 19th, and I think you can pre-order it pretty much anywhere right now, so you can go do that. Then on May 3rd, I will be reading, well, I'll be buying anyway, Seasonal Fears by Seanan McGuire. This is the sequel to Middle Game by Seanan McGuire. And I'm pausing while I say that because I was not convinced that there needed to be a sequel to Middle Game. So Middle Game follows these two twins, Roger and Dodger, and they are supposedly like the smartest individuals of the entire world. They were kind of like a science experiment gone wrong or right, depending on what side you're on. And the reason that they are so smart is because they are actually like one massive brain split into two people. But because of that, and because of all the possibilities of their existence and what they mean, there's kind of like a whole race to try to either have them like ascend to their highest potential or be reclaimed by the lab that created them. So it's kind of like a fun sci-fi fantasy. I would say leaning more a little bit on the fantasy side of things because the science doesn't always have explanations behind it, but it was still a fun sci-fi fantasy adventure, and I really loved it. It was one of my favorite books. The way that it left off, I didn't think there was going to be a sequel, but it seems like the sequel to this might not be a like sequel following the same characters. Two characters that it seems like it's going to be following is Melanie and Harry, and plays with the idea of like death and destiny and morality. Very much like the first book, the details on this sequel are very sparse. So the only thing that I know is that the synopsis has two different characters in it. So I'm going to be curious to see if they are characters that we've met already. To be honest, I don't remember the names off the top of my head. So I'm not going to say that I remember fully that they were characters, but it could be completely new characters. Maybe it's reincarnated characters. Who even knows? But I think I'm going to buy it anyway because I typically love Seanan McGuire, and she's another one of my auto buy or auto read authors. So I'm going to trust that she knows what she's doing, and I'm going to enjoy it when it comes out. In the same month, we are going to get The Legacy of Molly Southbourne by Tade Thompson. So this is the third and I believe final installment of the Molly Southbourne series of novellas. Like I said, I think it's a trilogy, but these books follow a young woman named Molly Southbourne who every time she bleeds, another one of her is created and she has to kill them before they kill her. So every time she gets a paper cut, her period, a nosebleed, she gets injured and bleeds, there's another duplicate or multiple duplicates of herself that come up and they are always out to get her. So I read the first novella, I believe it was last year, and I really loved it. It was a quick read. It was kind of like a great October read. And then the second one came out, and to be honest, I completely forgot because of school, so I didn't get around to reading the second one yet. But the third one comes out on May 17th, and because it's a novella series, I think I can read the second one to catch up in time for the third one. But ultimately, I really liked the premise of the first book. I thought maybe it was gonna only be a standalone, but then, like I said, I heard the second one was announced, and now I'm really itching to get back into that world because it was such a cool concept, and the idea of like going through life having to constantly battle and fight yourself. And at the end of book one, we did kind of have a small cliffhanger. It was one of those where like you could have just left it as it is and let the reader speculate, or you could have had a series. So the fact that we have a series, it makes me want to read it. But yeah, definitely a unique idea. I really like the fact that every time you bleed, you create another part of yourself that you have to kill. So it's just all interesting. So definitely recommend reading the series if you haven't so far, and be on the lookout for the third in the series on May 17th. Next, I'm looking forward to Our Crooked Hearts by Melissa Albert. So this is another kind of dark young adult novel. I haven't been reading too many young adult novels, I realized this year, which is kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to read more adult fantasy because that's what I write. But I really like Melissa Albert. Melissa Albert wrote the Hazelwood series that I read, and the first book was phenomenal for me. I liked that it was twisty and turny, it was gritty, it was a young adult, but had darker themes in it, but not enough that it like would have pushed it into an adult category. And it was like just the perfect book for me. It was definitely like an actually true solid upper young adult book, so like an older teen book, and it was very well done. And because of that, I really like the premises she has, and I think Our Crooked Hearts is going to follow suit. Melissa Albert also typically has a trope about like mothers and daughters, and I think this book also has that trope in it because you are following one character who's 17, whose name is Ivy, and she gets into an accident and there's just essentially like a whole lot of misfortune, and she realizes that maybe her mother isn't exactly who she thought she was. And then there's another character that is Dana, who is 16, and she kind of finds her way into this supernatural escapade with two other girls. So I don't know if the two of them are going to coincide or it's going to be kind of like a then and now synopsis and how they're torn together. But I also love that premise too, where you have characters who intersect later in the book and don't start off that way. So overall, there's supernatural beings, there's kind of dark family secrets and histories, and there's like dark magic involved. And that's usually a recipe that I love. And since I have already loved Melissa Albert's take on fairy tales, I think I'm going to love this one too. So that comes out on June 28th, and I will be looking forward to it. And finally, the last two books I'm going to talk about come out later in 2022 and do not have covers currently. So there will be nothing on screen for you guys to see because they're not here so far. But the first book is coming out on September 22nd, and that is The Golden Enclaves by Naomi Novik. This is the third and final book of the Scholomance series, which starts with A Deadly Education, and the book I'm currently reading, which is The Last Graduate. So I'm currently reading the second book, as I said, but I know I'm going to finish that way before the September 22nd due date for the third book. And I don't know if there's going to be any special editions, but I will definitely be pre-ordering it and trying to read it as soon as possible because so far I've been obsessed with this series. I love the first book. I like the kind of blunt writing style that Naomi has in this series, and I also really like what I've read so far in book 2. Haven't gotten very far, but I'm really enjoying it. And I think this is also going to leave off on a cliffhanger, so I think I'm going to need the third book as soon as possible. It's a very easy series to read, and I really like the magical school setting. So this series follows a main character who is in literally a lethal school. She is kind of in like an adult Hogwarts area where all the kids are kind of sectioned into this magical school to learn and practice their magical abilities. But the school is tainted with a bunch of maleficaria or mals, and they are essentially like monsters in the school that try to eat all the children. So while they're studying and trying to do their best to survive and practice magic, they have to also worry about, you know, are we gonna be attacked and eaten or taken when we're doing, you know, when we're sleeping? So there's kind of a lot of stakes in the series, and the first book follows the characters as they try to save themselves from their junior year. Book 2 follows their senior year, and I'm assuming that book 3 is going to follow their first year out of the school setting. And it's going to be interesting to see if all the characters survive, because right now, like I said, book 2 is something that I'm currently reading, and it's their senior year, and I know that there's already things and plot twists that are happening. So I think book 3 is going to really tie it all together, and I hope that it doesn't let me down. And finally, the last book that I am anticipating in 2022 is The Glass Witch by Lindsay Puckett. So Lindsay is a fellow author tuber on the platform, and I will leave her link down below. This is going to be her debut novel, and if you aren't following her, you should definitely go do that, because she is so kind and amazing, and I am wishing her nothing but the best for her debut year, because as someone who also wants to write and be published one day, I can't imagine all the feelings she has going for her after working so hard to get to where she is. I'm very excited for her book, and it's not just because I really adore Lindsay as a person, but because I think her book sounds amazing. So this is the only middle grade book on this list. Middle grade is not something I typically pick up unless it calls to me. And I love stories about witches, so this by far calls to me. It seems like really cute. It's going to explore body positivity and disabilities and family dynamics. And as her tagline says, it's a snicker of magic meets hocus pocus with a touch of dumplin'. And I have not read the other two references, but I love hocus pocus. The main character, Adelaide, wants to win a town pageant, but because she is a plus size girl, she does not really think she's going to make it, and everyone kind of makes her feel that way. So she ends up enacting a little bit of magic to try to help her win, but instead releases a curse, and she has to try to hunt down all the things that she needs to break the curse before everything becomes permanently damaged. And I think this sounds like a really fun and heartwarming tale. And like I said, I'm so happy for Lindsay, but I'm also happy that I'll be able to read this book. So I am very excited about it. It comes out on October 18th. And I'm sure Lindsay, if you're not following her, go do it, because she's going to be doing updates and all wonderful stuff on her channel throughout the year in anticipation of her book release. And there you have it. Those are all the books that I am looking forward to in the year 2022. I don't have very many, like I said, because I guess I'm just not as caught up on all the books that are being released in the year. But I'm kind of content with a smaller list. I have so many books on my shelves that I still need to read and get to. So I think having a smaller list of 2022 releases will be in my favor. So let me know down below what you think of the books that I am excited to read in 2022. And let me know what are some books you are interested in as well. Because, you know, there's nothing wrong with me adding a few more after this video goes out. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you then. Bye!